the topic is how to stop stress from killing you. And this is how we have organized the session. So we'll do about 5 minutes of intro about the mentoring club. Then Pete Alexander, Professor Pete Alexander, will walk us through how to stop stress from killing you. It's very interesting. When we did our practice sessions, I think you'll have fun with this. And then we'll dedicate about 20 minutes for Q&A and takeaways. And we'll have 5 minutes announcements, and we'll have virtual networking for about 20 minutes towards the end. And we'll talk about some takeaways and then wrap up. So hopefully we would be done by 8:30. So just quickly about the mentoring club, we have presence in social media channels. So you can see here LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Again, I want to thank all the volunteers and supporters who are there to make this event possible. So we have events folks. Some of them are here. Of course, Pete, our speaker for tonight, our outreach partners or collaborators, you'll see this in the emails. There are different organizations that are actually promoting our events. And then on the marketing side, we have social media, Salesforce administration, and SEO. These are the folks behind that. From a community management standpoint, helping with onboarding mentees. We have Cloud there, who is a mentee helping out. And then fundraising, we have Donna. And Louis, I believe, is also going to sign in. And then we're getting pro bono legal support from Wilson Sonsini. So these are the folks that we owe our existence to, and their support is very valuable. So who we are, the Mentoring Club, you probably know, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our mission is to provide a mentoring community for aspiring and seasoned leaders. In the end, what we really want to achieve is that people are able to land jobs that they feel that they're doing meaningful work and they are making a positive impact in the world. And as mentees become leaders, our dream is for them to become mentors to others. So these are some of the mentees that we have in the platform, past, present. Some of them are on pause because of having achieved their goals or changes in life situations. But these are some of the mentees we have had in the platform. These are some of the mentors that are helping us with our mission. And in terms of having an idea of what the community composition or the community needs are, as far as development skill areas, our mentees have expressed that these are the areas that they need help on. And so if you're looking to become a mentor, then we need help in these areas, top 20 development skills. If you're looking to become a mentee, you may be able, this needs may resonate with you. And if not, we have about 93 skill development areas in the platform that we have identified. As far as community industry coverage is concerned, I guess since we're based out of Silicon Valley, number one is information technology. It would be interesting actually if 10 years down the road, when we're able to go global, how this chart will look like. But these are the industries that we have presence on in terms of mentors and mentees. As far as geographic distribution is concerned, majority is in California, but we do have people participating in other states presented here. And also from a global standpoint, we have, again, majorities in the US, but we do have presence in Australia, Canada, China, Denmark, India, the Philippines, Taiwan, Ukraine, UK, and Vietnam. And so for today's topic, as we mentioned, so how to stop stress from killing you. We found it very interesting and very timely because we have so many stressors in our environment right now. And so Pete has kindly accepted the opportunity to help us in the community deal with stress. So just a quick technicality when during his presentation, when you uh, there will be a portion when he will ask us to do a community activity. And so please, in order for you to do a gallery view, if you're not familiar with Zoom, then look at the upper right corner of your Zoom screen and just choose gallery view. And now, so Pete is our featured mentor, as I said. So I will let him do some introduction about his background. But what I would like to share with you is how I met him. So I was just reviewing our LinkedIn exchanges because I found out about Pete in 2019 because I was working at a consulting company, J-Way Group, and one of my clients in the healthcare industry, Tracy, mentioned that, oh yeah, since you're doing the mentoring club, I know of somebody who is really a good potential mentor. And I found that Tracy responded to one of Pete's um, activities or comments on LinkedIn. And so I reached out to him cold. I said, you know, I'm setting up the mentoring club, and based on your background, it would be great if we could have an informational session and you might want to consider being a mentor. And so he did. So guys, that's a good testament that networking really works. So I'll give you the floor, Pete.
Thank you, Lucille. And yeah, that was it was a great opening conversation that we had, and it's been a pleasure being part of this part of the mentoring club since then. So let me go ahead and I will share my screen here. Thank you for that introduction. I'll start with just the fact that stress almost killed me. So that's why the title of this presentation is what it is. And for me, it was a feeling of being mentally and emotionally overwhelmed. And that happened to me many times throughout my career. But in particular, it happened to me in 2008 when I was faced with a whole series of stressful activities that really, really caused me to start losing my health. And things like my dad was dying and his affairs had to be taken care of. My mom had major hip surgery and didn't have insurance to help with the physical therapy afterwards. I had a small business that I had to run with a whole host of employees that needed my attention. My kids were really small and wanted my attention. My marriage was not doing well as well. And so all these things were all on riding on my shoulders. It culminated in my diagnosis with stress-induced diabetes, but I didn't listen to my body about what stress was doing to it. Instead, I had 10 more years of burning the candle at both ends until I ended up in the emergency room and an extended stay in the ICU unit with a severe case of diabetic ketoacidosis. I was 1 hour from being comatose. And for those of you who don't know what diabetic ketoacidosis is, in layman's terms, my body was eating itself alive because of my stress. My story is not unique. Let me tell you about my friend Ken. Ken and I met in high school. We served as each other's best men at our weddings. We supported each other as proud fathers. And then fast forward 30 years, and Ken found himself struggling in both his personal and professional life. And he too ended up in the emergency room. But in his case, it was with intestinal cancer. The doctors had to remove over 2/3 of his intestines, and then he had to undergo chemotherapy. In between his chemotherapy sessions, Ken and I would talk frequently. Almost every single conversation we had, Ken would tell me he was absolutely convinced that stress caused his cancer. So, over the next several minutes, I'm going to review why we should care about stress, how we manifest stress. I'll introduce you to the Lighten model for foundational stress relief, and then we'll get into the real fun, which is interactive exercises that will help you reduce your stress. And hopefully, after this workshop, you'll have at least one technique that you can take away with you that will help you, that you can utilize anytime you feel that stress starting to perk up. And then I'll wrap up the two stories that I started with, and then we'll open it up for questions. Why should we care about stress? The two stories that I started with, myself and my friend Ken ending up in the emergency room, are obviously indicators individually of what stress can do to ravage your body. But on a more global standpoint, the World Health Organization calls stress the #1 health epidemic of the 21st century. Now, I know that COVID has been getting a lot of attention this year, but think about, what does COVID cause us? COVID causes us stress, stress about having to work from home, stress about maybe the job or your business is struggling. Maybe you have kids that have to be homeschooled because they can't go to school and you don't know when they'll be able to go back to school. And if they do go back to school, is there a potential that they get exposed to the virus? All these things cause us stress. And hopefully, by next summer, from what I read, COVID will hopefully be behind us. Yet stress will still be there. And that's why the WHO still calls stress the #1 health epidemic of the 21st century. And how do you know you're manifesting stress? So we manifest stress both mentally and physically. Mentally, it might be a lack of concentration instead of being able to focus. Maybe you have mood swings and you're going from, happy to sad or angry at a moment's notice. Maybe you're having panic attacks that you never had before, or you're anxious about some future event, or you have prescription drug and or alcohol addiction. Any one of these are indicators that you are mentally stressed. Physically, might be as simple as a frequent colds. Instead of maybe one cold a season, you're getting one cold a month. Or you're getting back and shoulder stiffness, which is one of the earliest signs of physical stress, because when we're stressed, we tend to hunch over at our desks, and that causes that back and shoulder stiffness. Digestive disorders that no amount of Pepto-Bismol can fix, or maybe you're reaching for the Excedrin bottle every day or every other day instead of occasionally because of your headaches. And weight fluctuations, either gaining or losing weight rapidly. In fact, right before I was diagnosed with stress-induced diabetes, I lost 30 pounds in 30 days. And at first, I thought this was fantastic. I was in my mid-40s, and I wasn't dieting, and the pounds were coming off. I wasn't doing any special exercise. They kept on coming off. And at first it was great. And I was excited because I hadn't lost weight in several years. But once that 30th pound came off, I thought, I better have my blood work done. And sure enough, stress-induced diabetes. And where does stress manifest itself from? You probably can figure that most of our stress these days is mental, but what you might not know is that most of our stress is self-induced. We do it to ourselves. And during my research for my book, I found that there were 7 areas where we manifest our stress from. And those areas are our livelihood or our career, our imagination or our conscious mind, our genius or our unconscious mind, our physical health, the time we have available, our environment, and our network of relationships. These make up the Lighten model for long-term stress relief. And I wanted to touch on each one briefly before we get into the fun activities. So our livelihood, our career, we are likely to spend more time at work than doing just about anything else. Those of us with workaholic tendencies will work more hours than we sleep. Given the enormity of time involved with our careers, it is so important to find at least one or two techniques that can help you gain more balance. Our imagination or our conscious mind, it's only 5% of our brain, but it's where our inner critic lies. It's where our control freak lies. And it's also where our creativity is. And it's important to be creative when coming up with solutions to stressful situations. Our genius or our unconscious mind. This runs our body 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you've ever had the experience of getting behind the wheel of your car and driving from point A to point B and having absolutely no recollection of that drive, that was your unconscious driving. It's where your memories are stored. It's where your habits are formed. It's where your perception of the world lies. And it's where real change actually happens. Your physical health. It's the inspiration for why I do what I do today. If you don't have your health, nothing else matters. And if you don't believe me, think about the last time that you were really sick. Did you feel like you wanted to do anything other than lie in bed? Probably not. So make sure that you take care of your health. Your time, another precious resource. Yet with time, once it's gone, we can't get it back. So that's why you need to take action today. Not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, today. Even if it's 1 or 2 minutes a day, if you start practicing a technique that works for you to help you reduce your stress, the compound benefits over time will be enormous, but you have to start today. Your environment, whether it's at work, at home, at school, is critical to your success. So think about if you're working on a project, chances are you need some silence, a comfortable place to sit, minimal interruptions, and understanding from those around you. So make sure that your environment is supportive of your stress relief efforts. And finally, your network of relationships. The people in your life matter. When you're stressed, you are less patient, more irritable, less able to listen, or show interest and empathy. Don't take your relationships for granted. Make sure that they're aligned with the other aspects of the Lighten model. And with that, we get into the fun stuff. So before we actually start with the first activity, what I would like to ask everybody to do is to turn off any of your notifications on your phone, email, Slack, whatever you might have open. Do yourself a favor and turn those off for the next several minutes, because if you get distracted by a notification while we're doing these activities, you won't get anything out of the activity. So I'll give you a minute to make sure that those things are turned off, and then we'll get started with the first activity. Okay, so the first activity, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to take a deep breath and close your eyes. And in your mind, I want you to go to a place you like to relax. Maybe it's a beach, maybe it's a park, maybe it's a lake, maybe it's your backyard, maybe it's the spa. Wherever it is, go there now in your mind and take in all of your senses. What do you feel? Do you feel the sun on your face? Do you feel the sand or the grass under your feet? What do you smell? Do you smell the fresh air? Maybe the lotion from the spa? What do you hear? Do you hear the wind blowing through the trees? Maybe water splashing on the shore? And what do you see? Do you see blue sky? Maybe the green of the trees or the grass? Whatever it is, take it all in and then take another deep breath. And open your eyes. It's a simple visualization exercise combined with some deep breathing that you can do at any point. It takes maybe a minute, minute and a half to ground you. So that's a visualization. So good. All right, so then now we're going to get into a really fun one. So I don't know how many people have heard of laughter yoga, but laughter yoga has been clinically proven to reduce your stress and improve your health. I got certified in this technique, and I want to take you through an activity to show you how this works. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you at this point to turn your view into gallery view, as Lisel talked about, and so that you can see people's screens. And if you can turn on your camera just for this activity, and then you can turn it off. So let's see if we get people to turn on them so we can see everybody. All right. We got a couple more people that haven't turned theirs on, but it's really helpful if we can have the live camera. So here's what we're going to do. What I'd like you to do is imagine that you just received a bill that you did not expect. It's a bill that maybe you got a text from, maybe you got an email, maybe it came in the regular snail mail. And what I'd like you to do is imagine that you're holding it in one hand. So put one hand out and pretend like you're holding it there. And then with your other hand, I want you to point at it. Okay? And now, what I'd like you to do is go ahead and just start laughing like this. Just do a fake laugh. And look at everybody else. It's easier to do it that way. And keep doing it for a few more seconds. Keep it up. Keep it up. Laugh. Force the laugh. Okay. Now take a nice deep breath and notice how you feel. Here's the crazy thing, the absolute crazy thing. Your body doesn't know the difference between a real and a forced laugh. It only knows that you're laughing. And when you're laughing, it excretes the positive endorphins that give you the benefits. So if you think about it, the next time that you get that unwanted email, unwanted text, unwanted letter in the mail, the US Post Office, consider laughing at it first. Because what it'll do is that will ground you and you will be better prepared to deal with that message. And all it takes is 15 to 20 seconds of laughing. Okay? And I will go back to sharing my screen here. So thank you for participating in that. That's the only group one we're going to do. All the other ones are individual. So the next activity, a lot of times our stress is based, we talked about how it's self-induced, that we do it to ourselves. That is often based on fear. We're afraid of something. And fear is actually a 4-letter acronym that stands for fictional evidence appearing real. Fictional evidence appearing real. Again, we're doing it to ourselves. We're worrying often about stuff that really has no basis in fact, but we worry about it and we fear, make ourselves so fearful. So whenever I'm working with somebody who has a situation like this and they're fearful of maybe going for a new job, or fearful to try and get a promotion, or fearful to get a loan for a house or something like that, what I like to ask is the following question. What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? Think about the energy around that question. Instead of being in a stuck mode like we are when we're fearful, it opens up the world of possibilities. We start to stretch ourselves in new ways. And inevitably, if we're stretching ourselves in new ways, we're going in uncharted waters that we've never been before. We'll run into a speed bump here, or run into a wall there. That is not failure because, again, it's uncharted waters. It's actually feedback telling you need to try something different as you are on your way to success. And it all starts with asking yourself the question, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? So our next activity is personal values. Personal values are what's important to you, how you spend your time, and how you evaluate the use of your time. So I'm going to help you professionally elicit your personal values as it relates to your career. For this activity, you'll need either a pen and paper or opening up Google Doc or Word Doc on your computer, or on your phone. If you're on your phone, open up a notes app so that you can type it in. I'd like you to think about 3 times in your life as it relates to your career. So close your eyes. I'm going to ask you the first one. Think of a time in your life as it relates to your career when you were most happy. Most happy. Who were you with? What were you doing? What was the event? The second time I'd like you to think about as it relates to your career was a time when you were most proud. Most proud. Who were you with? What were you doing? What was the event? And the third time I'd like you to think about as it relates to your career, think of a time when you were most fulfilled. Most fulfilled. F-U-L-F-I-L-L-E-D. Who were you with? What were you doing? What was the event? Now that you have those 3 in your mind, I'd like you to open your eyes and write down or type as many 1- and 2-word answers to the following question. What's important to you about your career? What's important to you about your career? As many 1- and 2-word answers to that question. What else is important to you about your career? So now that you have a list of your values, what I'd like you to do is to rank them from most important to least important. Your most important value should have the number 1 next to it, and your least important value should have the last number from your list. And if you have any difficulty ranking one value versus another, you could ask yourself the following question. If you could have value A, but you couldn't have value B, would that be okay with you? Now that you have your top 5 values as it relates to your career, what I'd like you to do is take a picture of it with your phone, or if you wrote it down on a piece of paper, keep it in your purse, your wallet. Just make sure that you keep it handy, because the next time that you have an important decision to make as it relates to your career, make sure that decision is in alignment with your top 5 values. Because if it is not, I guarantee you will create unnecessary stress in your life because you are not being true to yourself. Your personal values is what's important to you about your career. So our next activity is called Random Acts of Kindness. And it's amazing how a simple message saying that you are thinking of someone works wonders for relieving stress, not only for the person that you send that to, but also for yourself. And a great habit to get into is to just at the start of your workday, take 1 minute to write an email, to send a text, praising or thanking someone for something they did, or just letting them know that you were thinking of them. But here's the caveat. Don't expect a response, because if you set expectations, you set yourself up for disappointment. Instead, send the thank you note because you want to. And if you do get a response, consider it the cherry on top of your ice cream sundae and enjoy a jolt of positive energy, a random act of kindness, and it works amazingly well. Okay, the next one you're probably going to think that this is a little woo-woo, but this one is actually scientifically backed, and it's called Ask the Pendulum. What this technique is designed for is if you've ever had a decision that you have to make, that's a yes or no decision, and you're having difficulty making that decision. Well, when you can't make a decision, that causes stress. What this technique does is it allows you to tap into the power of your genius, your unconscious brain that we talked about earlier. So let me show you how this works. All you need is a simple piece of jewelry, a locket or something like that, that's on a chain. And it needs to have some sort of a weighted object on it. So like a locket, or, if you actually have a pendulum, it would be perfect. And what you do is you make it stationary as much as possible. And then you say, pendulum, show me yes. And amplify. And you'll see that it's going back and forth. I'm not moving this consciously. It's going back and forth. So then I stop it and I see, or I should say left to right. And then I say, pendulum, show me no. Amplify. And this might be harder to see on camera, but it's actually going in clockwise. So left to right is yes, clockwise is no. And then I ask it a simple yes or no question, preferably with some sort of a deadline on it, because that makes it a little bit more specific. I've been thinking about getting a dog. So pendulum, should I adopt a dog this year? Amplify. Well, look at this. It's going left to right, meaning that the answer is yes, I should get a dog before the end of the year. What's happening here is your unconscious is communicating what you really want through micro muscle movements in your body. I wouldn't try this with, let's say you're deciding to get married, you're thinking about buying a house or something like that. I wouldn't do that with this right away. Start with some simple questions to get comfortable with it, get some confidence with it. But it is amazing how you can tap into your unconscious, which typically your conscious cannot find out what your unconscious has going on. But this way you can tap into it to give yourself the answer that's best for you. So you just have to do is ask the pendulum. It's a really cool technique. Our last activity is called Hakalau. And Hakalau is a light meditation that is really good for if you are about to go into what you perceive to be a stressful situation. So think about maybe you have to give a presentation and you're worried about that. Or maybe you have to have a difficult conversation with someone. So a couple of minutes before you have to go do that stressful event, what you do is you either sit or stand, works either way, and you pick a stationary spot on the wall, preferably above eye level. So find one of those in your room right now. And what I'd like you to do is stare at that spot and let your mind go loose and focus all of your attention on that spot. Notice that within a matter of moments, your vision starts to spread out and you see more in the peripheral than you do in the central part of your vision. Pay more attention to the peripheral. In fact, pay more attention to the peripheral than the central part of your vision. And stay in this state for as long as you feel comfortable. Notice how that feels. So go ahead and close your eyes and open them back up and come back into the webinar. And notice that you're more calm, more aware of your surroundings, and better grounded to take on that stressful event. So this is Hakalau, and again, you can do it at any moment as long as you have just a minute of quiet time. So I'd like to wrap up the two stories that I started with my friend Ken. And if you recall, he ended up in the emergency room with intestinal cancer, having over 2/3 of his intestines removed. And then he had to undergo a series of chemotherapy treatments. 2 weeks before his 49th birthday, and not long after this picture was taken, Ken passed away because of his disease. Stress got the best of him. As for me, lying in that hospital bed was an epiphany moment for me, because I knew that if I continued to put my career, my other responsibilities ahead of my health, I wasn't going to be around much longer. So I started applying a whole bunch of different stress relief tools and techniques, including all of the ones that we've done tonight. And what I noticed was that not only did my stress start going down, my glucose numbers as a diabetic went down, my weight went down, and my energy level went way, way up. It was as if I had discovered some sort of fountain of youth. And so now my mission is to educate other professionals like yourself on how to tackle stress head on, because I believe we all can reach our full potential if we can get a handle on our stress. And thank you. I'm going to put the links to the techniques we did in the chat so you can practice them on your own. If there's any questions from the audience.
Yeah, we have one on the chat. I'm sure all of us or some of us also had set aside some questions. So this is the opportunity to unmute yourselves if you want to speak, or if not, just write it in the chat. But one question is, you mentioned earlier, what do you mean by stress-induced diabetes, and how does it happen?
So it's a very good question. So if you were to ask a doctor, they would say that there is not the direct correlation between a chronic disease like diabetes or cancer or heart disease, et cetera, and stress. What happens there's in between that is cellular inflammation. When we are stressed, we get cellular inflammation, and chronic cellular inflammation at where we're stressing ourselves out over and over and over again. The cellular inflammation remains in our body, and that's what causes the chronic disease. So that's what I meant by stress-induced diabetes.
Is it possible, Pete, that we don't realize we are stressed because we find the stressor is actually part of our balanced life? You know, we always hear stress is good, it motivates us. So is it possible?
Well, it's more than just possible. There is good stress and there is negative stress. And so I'm glad that this was asked. Good stress, it's also called eustress. It's spelled EUSTRESS. That is the stress that we get when we're able to meet deadlines, because we need to have some sort of stress to help us get things done. And if we are happy in our jobs, if we're happy in our personal lives, and we're able to get an opportunity to continue to work in the chosen field that we love, the stress usually involved with that is actually good stress. The negative stress, the ones that we really have to watch out for, come in pretty much two varieties. One, it's called rumination. And that's if you've ever gone to your past and felt guilty about something, or continued to go back in your past and thought, oh, if only I could change things. Living in the past, which is called rumination, you really can't get any benefit from that. You can learn from your past and take the positive learnings from that. But if you dwell in the past and feel guilty about the past, that is negative stress. Also, in the future, if you're anxious about something, and I mentioned earlier that most of our stress is self-induced and based on fear. Often in the future, we're worried about something that's going to happen. Have you ever worried about something and you really twisted yourself up into so many different knots, only to find out that what you expected didn't happen? So that anxiety that we create for ourselves, that also is negative stress. So if you can avoid the rumination in the past and the anxiety in the future, you're going to be way healthier. And the eustress, because if you're happy at work, if you're happy in your relationship, the stressors around that usually are positive stress.
Pete, I have a question, or actually reflection, and with a question.
Okay.
So I realized when you were walking us through the exercise where you asked us to imagine or recall the times that when we were, number one, happy,
Mm-hmm.
and then number two, proud,
Mm-hmm.
and number three, fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know in your other workshops, but while I was walking through that exercise, I kept going back to the same situations for all three.
Yes.
And there will be some instances where I would insert, oh yeah, and this one too, right? So in this situation too. So is that common?
It is, Lyselle, because often things that we think that we're most happy, it's because we achieved something at work. And so we're proud of that. And then if we're happy and we're proud, we're likely to be fulfilled. But the reason I separate the three out is because just as many people who have like one event with all three, they might think, okay, in this company, I was really happy because of this. In this company, I was fulfilled because of that. And they have different characteristics about them. So it's better to ask all three. And if you noticed in the technique how I did it, I paused about a minute, a little over a minute, when I first asked, what's important to you about your career? And then waited a minute. And then I said, what else is important to you about your career? And what else is important to you about your career, with a minute or so in between. That was purposeful because your first answers are going to be your conscious mind. The second and third answers are going to be transitioning to your unconscious mind.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Because I was saying, okay, I keep going back to the same situations. So before I ask another question, does anybody have any question from the community?
Oh, hi, it's Elisa. I do have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so thank you so much for these exercises. It's been great.
Sure.
I just wanted to know if you have any suggestions or tips. So, going to the doctor's office and getting blood pressure, I feel like anxious when I go into the office, like rushing to get there. and then having to get my blood pressure, and I do feel like kind of being anxious or whatnot, and then it does go up. And if there's any way, like don't drink the coffee or the tea beforehand, or if there's some sort of visualization or some sort of technique where I could calm my mind down or something down, so I feel like I'm in a, like, calm down or something. So do you have any suggestions for that?
Yeah, so that's a great one. So in addition to the visualization and the Hakalau exercises we did tonight,
Mm-hmm.
another one that's really good is, and so there were two parts what you were talking about. One was that you were rushing to the doctor. That's different than get in the doctor's office and worrying about getting the test. So let's just assume being in the doctor's office, because if you're running late, that's a whole different animal. But in the doctor's office itself, another technique that we can do to help with our anxiety is we visualize right after the event that it goes very positively. So if you're getting your blood pressure, imagine that 5 minutes after your measurements that your blood pressure's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a positive. And how do you feel about that? Do you feel good that your blood pressure is lower? So anytime we're worried about something that's going to happen, if we think about it having a successful outcome,
Mm-hmm.
and we think about how does that feel right after the event. So another great example is if you're worried about the presentation, you imagine a standing ovation, or on Zoom, everybody clapping and really happy and getting a lot out of it. How does that feel? And you take in all of your emotions about that, and your stress will go way down, and that anxiety goes way down. And in your case with the blood pressure, your blood pressure should go down as well.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting thing what you just mentioned, because I've done visualizations where I just say, I'm going to have a great conversation with this person. And so like you're thinking positively about the outcome of the event before the event happens.
Correct. And it's, there is really a lot of truth to having the ability to manifest outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you think about it, when we are anxious, we tend to have a little bit more negative mentality. And if we are projecting negativity, we're going to attract back that negativity. But the same thing is positive. If you are thinking positive, you are going to be attracting positive responses back to you. Our stress levels, obviously, the more positive it is, the less we're going to be stressed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
You bet. Great question.
Yeah, this is Jen. I have a question for you. From time to time, if you get this a very sticky thought, it's not good for you. You couldn't do anything about it, but it's just keep coming back to you. Is there any good way to alleviate or block that? Even though you tell yourself, it's not good to think about it, but it's just keep coming. And yeah.
Yeah, so if I understand you correctly, it's basically a negative thought that keeps on coming up over and over again. Is that
Yeah.
what's happening?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we all have emotional baggage. And when we have a negative encounter that happened to us, let's say as a kid, and it affects us throughout our life unless we're able to take care of it. Usually if it's something chronic where it constantly is coming up from time to time, you're never able to get rid of it. What I recommend, there's a technique called mental and emotional release. And what that does is it's a technique where you work with someone, a trained professional, who is able to help you get in touch with your unconscious, which your conscious mind does not have an ability to get in touch with your unconscious, but through a process, you're able to get in touch with your unconscious. And through this technique, what you do is you go back to that source event that caused that negative encounter. And what happens is in your unconscious, you remove the negative emotion tied to that first encounter and any subsequent events that might have happened that were tied to that. And then what happens is you don't forget about the event, but the emotional charge that's tied with that event becomes flatline. So in other words, I'll give you an example. when I had this technique done on me, there was somebody at work that every single time that I heard this guy's voice, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. It just, I could not stand hearing this guy's voice. He really rubbed me the wrong way. And after I had this technique, I remember coming in that following Monday morning, I heard his voice and it was like, oh, that's Doug. It wasn't like I didn't want to be his friend, but there was no emotional charge tied to that. It's mental and emotional release. You know what I can do for you is I can put it into the chat because I did a blog post on that as well. And you can take a look and get more information about that.
Great, thanks.
You bet.
What about people who are insomniacs? Is there any specific like stress relief exercise for them?
Insomniacs, and I've had some of this myself, and there's a particular technique that I did that really worked well. It's basically, I started scheduling worry time, and I'm not kidding you. If there's a big project that I'm working on, and I've been doing this more recently because I have this one project that I've been working on, I think, is this going to work? Is it not going to work, etc. And so I block a half an hour out of my day just to worry, just put down all of my thoughts about that. And if you can do that, what happens is it gets it off of your plate. And you just get that worry out there, and you just make that a practice where you say, okay, this is the time I'm going to worry. I'm not going to worry about it when I'm going to bed. And then hopefully, I don't think about it, and it works. It really does. I don't think about it because if you start thinking about it at night, you end up staying awake. The other one that's really good for this is meditation at night, because meditating helps you ground yourself. For example, I do meditation in the morning and in the evening. It doesn't take a long time. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, it could be 20 minutes, whatever you feel like doing. But what happens is when you start grounding yourself, you get into that mode of relaxation, and you should be able to fall asleep. So I would try either one of those. In fact, I have that schedule worry time. I have that as a blog post, and same thing with the meditation, because they're both techniques that I use all the time.
So I would imagine that the worry time will have to be before your sleep time in the evening, because otherwise if you do it in the middle of the day, then hours have passed and then...
Exactly. So it's usually in the evening. So that's what I do. My scheduled worry time is actually right after dinner, because I find that right after dinner, I want to let the food kind of settle, and I don't want to do it too close to going to bed because I don't want anything lingering.
Mm-hmm.
So it still gives me a couple hours before I go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a great question.
I noticed, I might be wrong, correct me, that all your techniques and recommendations are really controlling how one thinks. It's like controlling the mind, or mind control method. It's all in the mind. Lisa Lee said insomnia. And there are always recommended medicinal out there, like take melatonin. So what's your take on these things, on these taking medicine?
That's a good question. I always recommend that before you take anything, that you talk to your doctor about it. It might, if you're on a particular medication, you decide to take, let's say, a sleeping pill or something like that, that could be having an adverse effect. Melatonin, it's a natural compound. If you start taking more melatonin, like than just one little tablet, it can have an effect where you get some very odd dreams. So you have to be careful about that as well, especially melatonin, where if it's a natural compound that you don't get addicted to it, it's something that can be very helpful. But I always recommend before you do it to talk to the doctor to see if there's anything else that he or she would recommend. But I'm open to it, especially if you're traveling a lot. Melatonin helps to kind of regulate your sleep cycle, especially when you are on different time zones.
When we were doing the exercise about values, based on your experience, do the values change depending on a life situation when you're actually asking what those values are?
Yes, that's a really good question. So I first got exposed to personal values back in the early 1990s. I was working for a company that actually would bring personal values into an organization so the employees would take this workshop, figure out what their personal values were, and then align their personal values with their jobs. The theory was is that if you got a employee aligned with their personal values and what their role was, that they'd be happier, more productive, etc. So back then, personal health was not even on my list. But I guarantee you, my top personal value, regardless of area of my life, whether it's career, personal life, etc., is health because of what happened to me. And so usually what will happen is as you get older, top 5 values, at least 3 of them will likely not change over time, but 1 or 2 of them will based on life events. And the other thing too is we did it on career, but you can do the personal values activity on your relationships, like a significant other. You can do it on family. You could do it on your personal health. You could do it on your spirituality, all these various areas of your life. While my personal health is number 1 across the board, when it comes to my second, third, fourth top personal values, those are different depending on if it's my career versus my family, for example.
Oh, one final comment from me. So I really like the laughter exercise because I didn't know about tricking your body, right? So to, a fake laughter, it doesn't know what a fake laughter is. But what I have been doing for many years is that whenever I wake up in the morning, I would smile, and that sets me up, right? So it's like, so I didn't even know the science of it until, um, when we were talking about it. But I think it really works.
It does. And you want to know a little bit extra. So on a sunny day, it is very important to wear sunglasses. And it's not just for the protection of your eyes, because another thing that our body does is when we squint like this, our body thinks that we're stressed. So if we're smiling outside and we wear sunglasses, we're going to get the full benefit of that smile.
Okay. Okay. That's great.
I'd like to share something when you came up with that values technique and ranging the importance of it.
Hmm?
It just reminded me of something that was shared or what we underwent. I think it was right after college during my time. Have you ever heard of the technique, or it's called Ikigai?
Mm-hmm. I do.
Yeah.
I
So
do. Yeah,
that is very similar to what you're doing about values.
exactly.
It's about the secret, Japanese secret to a long and happy life
And it
and
is.
fulfilling life.
Yes. And so for those of you that don't know what that is, you have these, it's a Venn diagram basically, and it's these circles that intersect with each other. And basically what you're trying to do is figure out what you're good at, what the world needs, what you can make money from, and where it all intersects, that is where you find the full connection and are able to get what we were talking about, that eustress, being able to, the good stress to be able to get things done. So yes, I'm a big fan of Ikagais too. In fact, it's one of the techniques that I have in my book.
Really? Wow. I'd like to, if you don't mind, I'll share that one I found.
Yeah, go ahead and put it in. It's a really good technique, and I've seen some variations of it as well. So it's good, and it's just another way, a thoughtful process. That it's all about learning and getting in connection with what is important to you. And so whether it's personal values or any other technique, the importance is to figure out what is it that's most important to you. because if you know what's most important to you and you're true to yourself, you will reduce your stress.
It makes total sense.
It does. It's not rocket science. None of this is rocket science, but it's so easy to put it aside. And that's why I talk about this, because I'm the typical person who's going to say, okay, I'll get to it when I get to it. No worries. I paid the price. And so I'm trying to stop other people from encountering what I encountered.
So here are some of the links. So I will be sharing with you a Google Drive folder where you can actually download the event materials. So you will have the slides from Pete and also my slides. So you can refer to these links that Pete has shared with us on those techniques that we walked through tonight. And we're done with the Q&A. So I'll just go and do a bit of announcements so you know what's going on in the community, and then we can go straight into the networking. And we'll give you some guide questions on the networking as well, so to make it productive and interesting for all the people in the group. So quick announcement for December. So December 10 is our next Mentoring Matters. And we will be talking about leadership, brand, and leadership identity. And our speaker is Mo Rubenzal. You have seen him here. For those of you who have attended any of our sessions in the past, you've seen him participate in those sessions. And he is also one of our first few mentors who signed up when I was starting the Mentoring Club. And I would like to invite you. So again, this is an investment in our health as leaders. We have Mentors and Leaders Yoga. We partnered with one of our mentors and who is also a yogi, Deepali. She set up her nonprofit Blissful Yoga and Wellness. So you're welcome to join us every Wednesdays and Saturdays. For this coming Saturday, we had to postpone it because of an Indian holiday that they're celebrating. And I wanted to give you a report on the fundraiser that we did in September and October. So it's called Give Back, Lead Forward Virtual Run, Walk, Bike. So we launched the campaign on July 28th. We did the actual virtual run, walk, and bike from 09/09/2020 to 10/10/2020. So that's 32 days. And for the donation, we extended it up through October 31st. And currently what we have in the books is we were able to get gross receipts from both registration and donations of 6,340. So thank you to Louis and Donna for helping us set that up. And of course, Breen for doing all of our videos during the event. Thank you very much to everybody who participated, and we hope that you will continue to be involved in the community. And then the next one is Thanksgiving is around the corner. So there is this campaign worldwide. It's called Giving Tuesday. This is the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. So we will be setting up our fundraiser using Facebook. So Facebook is matching $7 million for all nonprofits who are going to be raising funds on that specific Tuesday. So just one trivia for you, and I've shared this with some of you, especially Donna and Louis in the fundraising team. So the matching that Facebook does goes in like a few seconds. So so they match dollar for dollar, and I had to experiment on this for a couple of years, because the first year I was so excited, 2018. So I said, okay, I'll donate $7,500 to the mentoring club. So if I do that, then it could be $15,000, right? So I did that for 2018, but unfortunately, it was not matched because the matching donations went out in a matter of seconds, I think less than 20 seconds. So I tried it again and I was there at like 5 a.m. because it starts at 8 o'clock Eastern time. So I was there at like 5 a.m. before 5 a.m. just waiting to hit donate. And so I tried it again on in 2019 last year. And this time, okay, I didn't want to tie up my entire money if it's not going to be matched. So I donated a little. So first I donated $100, and then right after that I donated $900. So the $100 is because, well, if the timing is it's not yet 5 o'clock or it's not yet 8 o'clock in the Facebook clock time. So for this round, so the 900 was actually matched. So the 900 became 1800. So it's just, if you're donating, it doesn't have to be the mentoring club. If there is a specific organization there that you feel very strongly about, of course the mentoring club will welcome your donations. But if you want to amplify your donation to any organization, you might want to do that for their benefit, like be there at like 5 a.m. and hit the donate button so that your impact is doubled. So that's just a quick trivia on our fundraiser. So now for the virtual networking, what we would encourage you to do is turn on your video if you're comfortable. We will create breakout rooms. And these are some of the topics that you could consider as you get to know each other. So of course, introduce yourself. Why did you decide to attend this session? What do you wish to receive from and offer to others in this session? And based on the topic this evening, what stress relief tool are you planning to use in the future and why? Okay, so anybody would like to share your insights during your breakout room?
We actually talked about a forgiveness exercise too, and I put the link in the chat. If you've had an encounter with someone during the day and you feel like you might be carrying that with you in the evening, it's a 7-minute meditation that allows you to take care of that. And so that's another really good exercise to use.
Not that we discussed in the breakout, but I've been reading a lot from this doctor, this Canadian doctor. His name is Gabor Mate, and he talks about how our mental scars separates us from ourselves. He says it's self-alienation, and from there separates us from others, and then from there, separates us from nature as well. And all those things make us sick. And we don't know it, and we don't know what to do about it. That's the problem. Yeah, but anyway, so he writes a lot about those things. And yeah, so all the work about, finding the way back to ourselves and all these things are really important to gain back our health. Quite interesting.
Does he talk about how the whole diabetes spike happened back in the 80s?
Not quite. He covers a whole lot more about ADHD and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, not that. Yeah, that's his angle more than other things. But that said, the issues is more general than people having ADHD. But his focus is on ADHD.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting how he puts it. I never realized it that way, but now that I'm reading it, I'm much more mindful of it.
Sure, because you're educating yourself, of course.
So based on the techniques that Pete showed us, has any one of you been practicing any of that? Did you discover from each other that, oh, I've been doing that?
Actually, I've been doing visualization, envisioning, sometimes called envisioning, visualization technique, which I learned from a group I used to belong to 30 years back. It's called the Silva Mind Control Method. The concept is our subconscious really is responsible for our actions during our awake time. I mean, our conscious time. It's being compared to an iceberg, as I shared. The tip of the iceberg is just our consciousness, and the subconscious is really what's below the huge chunk of the iceberg. The technique of visualization, I've been doing that, calming myself, getting to that point where I'm not asleep, but I'm not really conscious. I'm trying to go into that subconscious state and think all the positiveness, because that will influence my being aware when I'm in my conscious state. So visualization. Thanks for mentioning that again, Pete.
You bet. It's one of my favorites. Nobody does like deep breathing. That's an easy one. That's an easy one. Because even if you take 3 deep breaths before responding, it can save you a world of stress.
Mm-hmm.
There's I practice this thing. It's taught by the IMC, the Insight Meditation Center in Redwood City, to be aware as much as possible. I mean, it's never completely 100%. One technique is to pay attention, to look for a corner anywhere within my field of vision,
Mhm.
and just find one and then find another and find another as a reminder of focus and awareness, right? Combining that technique with the technique of saying, I'm listening, I'm talking, I'm breathing, just to ground
Awareness.
ground myself in awareness, right? So yeah, they're teaching that, and I sort of practice that.
That's good. Sounds like a kind of a version of the Hakalau that we did.
Chuck, did you have something to say? Because I saw your picture blink.
Well, one thing is I'm a member of Toastmasters, and one of the things we emphasize there is give a speaker some feedback, nod your head, and agree with them. So I wasn't trying to get attention, but instead simply respecting the intelligence of the speakers and appreciating them.
Thank you very much.
Now, as far as what we did, well, you're very welcome. Love that smile I've been looking at all evening. It does help me to deal with some of the sadness that tends to intrude into my life.
Thank
Now, as far as what might be of use, we have come to overvalue specialization. We create these incredibly precious people, our specialists, and yet we don't. They're like the bricks by which you build the walls of your home. And there's no generalists to act like the concrete to hold them together. And so in our room, I gave an example of in COVID, the way an extremely ineffective treatment killed half the patients. And yet you could go on Yahoo and find a better solution than what these incredibly, you don't make it through medical school unless you love people. I spent 4 years there setting up teaching systems when 3M owned the education. So we've just got to get better at collaborating with each other. And I think, Pete, you're a tremendous motivator of that.
Thank you.
Maybe Buddha too.
By the way, I just felt compelled to share this. So that Dr. Gabor Mate, he talks a lot about exactly that. That is, the fact that we got alienated to ourselves is because of pain, and we try to protect ourselves from pain and shield from it.
Uh-huh.
And that process, when you go too far, separates us from ourselves, right? And then we become alienated and then sick. So the way back is to accept things as they are, accept the pain, accept things as they are, to get back, basically. So there's a lot to it. That's quite interesting.
Does he talk anything about gratitude, Hong? Because that's a huge part of it too.
That's a big part of it.
6.
He talks not quite gratitude, but kindness.
Okay.
Acceptance and kindness, right?
Yeah.
And it starts with you.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it would not make sense. He talks a lot about being true.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Even if people around you don't like it the way you are, you have to accept yourself first.
Right.
Otherwise, you'll be alienated, and then that's the beginning of everything that goes wrong.
Well, yeah, we are our own worst enemies. We are
Mhm.
critics, and
Mhm.
we will be far worse to ourselves than anyone else. We'll just beat ourselves up, and so we have to learn to like first and then love ourselves before we can do anything for anyone else.
Yeah, he
True.
talked a lot about that. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
We ask forgiveness from others, but more important is that we should forgive ourselves first.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the activity that don't hold grudges, that's a great way to do that. The activity is you can actually forgive yourself. That's an eye opener.
In fact, that's part of a whole branch of things that I've followed over the years, which is what triggers you in other people reflects what you do not accept about yourself, actually. So that's a good indicator to your subconscious, right?
Mm-hmm.
When somebody triggers you, that's there's an alarm bell. It's not them, it's something in you. What is it?
Yes, and it's also talked about as they call it, the shadow. There's something about your shadow that's in you that's being triggered by someone else's actions. So
Are
very
you
true.
talking about the Ho'oponopono?
Yes,
Okay.
that was the link I put up there for Don't Hold Grudges. Yes, you know it, and that's
I
really
do it. Yeah, nobody knows. And even I talked to someone from Hawaii and she had never heard of that. Yeah, I watched the whole lecture by the doctor who thought of that. And yeah, I practiced that. Yeah,
and does it work?
fantastic.
for-
It works.
Thank you. There we go.
You're welcome.
So the link I put in there is the 7-minute audio meditation. So
Ah.
yep.
So I will check it out too.
Oh yeah,
Hong,
it's great.
yeah. Hong, can you share your book and the author that you mentioned in
Well,
the chat, please?
Yeah, let me find it.
And we can share the transcript of the chat. I will put it in the folder as well once we have downloaded it, so that you all have the links. So a great conversations. So we're 5 minutes over, but I just wanted to thank everybody for staying. I don't know if you've had your dinner, but thank you so much for interacting with everyone. I really appreciate it. And hopefully this has been very helpful for you. So just 2 reminders. Number 1 is that we're going to invite all the mentors, mentees, and also anybody who's familiar with us. We will do a blast. We want to do a holiday party, and that's actually being organized by Louis. We don't have a date yet, but he's going to be helped by our mentees and mentor. Actually, one mentor. If any of you want to get involved, currently it's Sean that's actually going to be helping out Louis as a mentor. But then we have like 4 or 5 mentees that volunteer that they want to help. So they're having their meeting tomorrow. So if you want to be involved in that preparation, please go ahead and connect with Louis. And then the second one is Donna posted on the chat, and I keep forgetting this in the previous sessions, but there will be a survey sent to you. If you haven't received it yet, it's gonna be there in a couple minutes. And you please go ahead and give us your feedback so that we know what to improve on, what other services or other activities you would benefit from. And so that's survey for the Mentoring Matters event, of this particular event, but we're also organizing a bigger survey so that we can understand our community better. An expert who took creating surveys has actually volunteered. I attended a webinar and I connected with her and she volunteered to do the surveys. We're reviewing the questionnaire now, and it will be released maybe, if not next week, the following week. So please go ahead and give us your feedback too. And with that, I will let Pete have the last words.
Well, I just want to thank you guys for hanging out this long. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you guys got something out of it. The only thing I would leave with you guys is don't trade your health for your other responsibilities. It is a very bad trade. Take care of your health.
The golden goose.
The golden goose. It's a really good one.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Good night and enjoy the journey.
All right. Thank you.
Nice seeing you. Nice meeting you, Elisa and Diana.
Take care.